Joining us right now from Vancouver and getting ready for the Whitecaps opener is our good friend from Off the Pitch, TSN 1040, Mike Martignago. Mike, welcome, my friend.
How are you, Anthony? Good to be on.
Yeah, thanks so much. And first and foremost, congratulations on a real special day for yourself, my friend, a few weeks ago.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. You know what? I was very quiet about getting married on Twitter. And a buddy of mine at the station decided to tweet about it, and he has quite a few followers, so it caught on a bit there. So I appreciate that.
Well, congratulations to you, and as they say in Italian, 50 to 100 years to you and your lovely bride. Mike, let's get right to it. The Caps have been real busy. We had President Bobby Lenarduzzi join us here on Friday, and we talked about a lot of the offseason moves. One fresh that took place right on Friday just before we had him on, a local kid. He's been on our show a number of times. I followed his career. That's Fraser Aird. I think this is a real good move by the Caps. I think this kid is going to bring a lot to the table. And what I like about a lot of these offseason moves the Caps have made is more younger, hungry players. Not these old, washed-up vets that think that they can make some noise in MLS with Vancouver. Robinson and the boys in the offices there have made some real shrewd moves. Talk about it.
Yeah, I think early on in the off-season, media, and I'd throw myself in that boat, and plenty of supporters were maybe a little worried and jumping the gun a bit after the Caps really failed and struggled down the stretch and fell out in the playoffs to Portland. But they are starting to really find their feet here, and they've made some nice additions, and you mentioned Fraser Aird, who comes in and can play a right back, right wing type role. And that's a question mark for the Caps because, you know, as they moved on from Steven Beitashour, who went to Toronto SC, they had Jordan Smith, the Costa Rican player. Not everybody was sold on him. So you bring in a guy like Aird, who, as you mentioned, is young and has some nice experience playing at Rangers in Scotland, and he comes in on really a good recommendation from Kenny Miller, who played at Rangers, who obviously was a member of Whitecaps FC. And he made a good connection with Carl Robinson. And he comes in here, and it is great to see because the Caps have, and they do, you look at their roster, 1 through 30, or in this case right now officially 26, they have a number of Canadian players. They're not really playing, though. So with Aird, there's a great opportunity for him to get some good experience, to really develop not only for club but for country.
Let's talk about the midfielder that I think is going to have a strong season for the Whitecaps and in MLS, the Costa Rican international, Christian Bolaños. I think he's going to bring a lot to the table. I think this is a guy that was needed at this time for this franchise moving ahead.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I've mentioned this a couple times. We don't want to kid ourselves and all claim that we're experts on Christian Bolaños. But if you watch the 2014 World Cup, you remember him, and I truly remember him from a match in particular when he played against Italy. I'm sure you recall that match as well, when Costa Rica picked up a 1-0 victory over the Italians, and he was very influential in that match. And he, along with his Costa Rica team, did very well in that World Cup, and he was kind of that straw that stirs the drink, and to add a player like him can really be important for this team. They've it's fair to say that they've improved on a guy like Mauro Rosales, who's no longer a member of the Caps, and they're acquiring a guy like Bolaños to maybe pick up the slack from a guy like Pedro Morales, who down the stretch last year started to tire, dealt with injury. Some news today that he's got a bit of a niggling calf problem. So if that's how it's going to shake down, Bolaños can really pick up the pace here. And looking at this roster right now, and I'm sure there are some moves to be had still, but this is a pretty deep team. There's going to be guys fighting for time and fighting to get onto the park, and that squad depth has really been improved upon.
Well, staying on that page that you just spoke about, fighting for time and guys trying to impress the coaching staff, I don't understand for the life of me. Explain to me why Darren Maddox is still part of this mix. Explain to me why he's going to take time away from a young Canadian. Explain to me why the fans should continuously support him and why Robinson believes in this guy, because I don't.
Well, the thing that's been talked about for a while now is he won't be here much longer. by all accounts, there are some clubs in Major League Soccer who are interested. I think the default time in, time out has been Portland because of his relationship with Caleb Porter and their history at the University of Akron. Where he goes, we don't know at this point. I don't see him being here much longer. You look at guys like Darren Maddox, and that was talked about when the Caps fell out in the postseason. Another guy, Eric Hurtado, with the additions and the moves and the players the Caps have, especially up front with Octavio Rivero, with Masato Kudo from Japan, a lot of talk right now, and we may talk more about him, in Blas Perez coming to Vancouver. There's speculation, very heavy speculation, that he'll be coming. There's simply no room for a guy like Darren Maddox. He's fallen deep on that chart. So, I just don't see a player like him, and Eric Hurtado for that matter, really sticking around.
Kakute Mene and Coffey, two young players on the rise, two guys that had unbelievable seasons again, very raw still, very young. And I think these two guys have to have a real solid, important season, contribute as much as they can for this team to go deeper into the playoffs. Agree or disagree?
Certainly on the matter of Kakuta Mane. He is an integral part of this team. He still deals with some ups and downs, but as last season progressed, there was the talk that he was raising the eyebrows of Jurgen Klinsmann and the U.S. men's national team setup. He's certainly a part of the big picture here. I mean, you can complain about his touch from time to time, his decision-making, but he is very much part of things here in Vancouver. Gershon Kofi, on the other hand, there are certainly question marks about him. There's been a lot of talk that he could be moved. He could end up with a club in, say, France or in Belgium. His future is definitely up in the air right now. There's a lot of competition in that midfield. Caps really like a young Honduran, and Davy Flores, who was here last year on loan, and they've acquired him permanently now. Russell Tybert's still in the picture. They have one of the best in Major League Soccer in Matias Laba as a holding kind of destroyer-type midfielder. So Kofi's status definitely up in the air.
Mike, Jordan Harvey, Tim Parker, to me, seem like two guys that rub off one another. The vet in Harvey, I think he's in his early 30s. Parker, early 20s, a guy that I think is opening up the eyes of some U.S. people as well. I think this is a good mix.
Oh, definitely. And, Harvey, you mentioned that experience that he brings. Tim Parker, you want to give him credit, but he has been a bit of a revelation at the same time. He really, really came into some fine form towards the end of the season. Yes, Pamo Dukas suffered some injury kind of late on in that 2015 campaign. Tim Parker came in and took it over, and that's where he's going to be, in the middle of the back line with Kendall Waston. Pamo Dukas still here, and he's kind of a lifeline in the training room as well, and offers a lot of experience. But it's all about Tim Parker, as you mentioned. And yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann looking at him too. He was brought down for that camp in California, and he's a guy that's looking to have a big 2016 campaign, and really has gotten on the radar of the U.S. men's national team setup.
One guy last year that I watched continuously, and I was in amazement how he kept up the pace he did, because he didn't look in shape to me. I could be wrong. Maybe he was suffering with injuries. That was Eric Hurtado. Every time I watch him, he just looks like a guy that's lumbering out there, that's struggling at the pace that needs to be had in MLS. Am I off?
Well, a couple seasons back, he wasn't bad, and he was taking strides and making improvement. Last season, played a bit part, kind of fell down the shuffle, wasn't making it into the 18, and they sent him on loan to Norway. And so he didn't really have an impact last year. And like I said, I can't really see what the future holds for Eric Hurtado in Vancouver. Might there be another suitor in Major League Soccer? That depends. He's a very quick guy, and you talk about kind of how he looks. He has a massive upper body. He doesn't have a soccer player's physique. He is just a strong guy, really all over. Big legs, big upper body, big chest, big arms. But the guy can move. He can sprint, and I think he still has to find his way a bit. He won't be a guy that's happy to play in USL. If he can find maybe a spot somewhere else in this league, that might be for him. But, his time in Vancouver, for me, and as I mentioned, him and Maddox, probably coming to a close.
Let's talk about the Whitecaps fans. Smart, intelligent, real progressive thinking fans. You get into the playoffs against the LA Galaxy that first time and almost pull off the unbelievable upset. Last year, a sour taste in many people's mouths. This year, I believe that they believe also that the bar needs to be raised to either get to the final or win it all. Am I off? Are Whitecaps fans getting restless that enough is enough, it's time to get to the final dance?
I think the token, the fair weather fan, is expecting a bit more. I think the diehard supporter is very appreciative of the growth that the club has shown with developing players, with going out to find players, and getting further, taking the next step in the postseason. They aren't picking up postseason wins though. So, if they can get to a conference final, MLS Cup is all fine and dandy. But I think they want to see the next step, and they want to see maybe a playoff victory and get to that next step, which would be the conference final. That would be the hope. Obviously, people want wins. They want titles. But I think there's probably a bit more pressure in, say, an environment like Toronto with some of the signings, the high-profile signings that they have versus Vancouver. But based on last year's regular season, they were hanging around there the entire way, nearly picking up the supporter shield. Right now, I think with the diehard supporter, they're not happy with a guy like Blas Perez potentially coming to Vancouver based on the history that he had against the Caps, got away with an ugly elbow on Jordan Harvey a few years back. But the guy's a bit of a Caps killer. He scored 4 times against them during his time with FC Dallas against the Caps. So I think they're really caught up with that right now as opposed to, well, can they win MLS Cup?
Mike, in 30 seconds or less, as we let you go, we really appreciate your time. I can't let you go without giving us an update if you have one. We spoke to Bobby Lenarduzzi about Canada getting ready to take Mexico on in your wonderful city, and the support is unbelievable. And I'll say this to you as I said it to Bobby, well done to all the people in Vancouver for supporting this game, getting behind Canada. And I said this to people in Toronto and Montreal. If you guys get close to 40 or even over 40, forget Toronto and Montreal hosting any more games for the foreseeable future in World Cup qualifying. Vancouver has earned it, and they deserve it. Are we getting closer to 40, Mike? What have you heard?
What I've heard is they're still kind of in that low 30 range. They've opened up a portion of that upper bowl, but you have to say there's a lot of talk out here, and there's a lot of excitement about this men's program. And, a couple of years ago, that was far-fetched. The idea of that was far-fetched. This has been such a home for the women's game, whether it's Olympic qualifiers or the World Cup. But getting to see the men kind of create that buzz, create that environment, that atmosphere. They were very pleased to be here when they picked up that victory against Honduras. They're liking the idea, obviously, enough to come back March the 25th to take on Mexico. Anthony, I don't know in the end how many of those 30,000 right now are in the hands of Mexican supporters, but I know Victor Montaliani, everybody organizing a part of that match, are very hopeful that there's going to be a lot of red and white that day.
And I think there will be. I spoke to Victor, as a matter of fact, yesterday, and he's excited and he's really pumped at the atmosphere that's going to take place in Vancouver come that game with a lot of Canadian support. Mike, thank you so much again for making time out of your busy schedule. Outstanding work on hosting Off the Pitch, TSN 1040. When is that, and where can people listen to that online as well?
At 9 o'clock Pacific time, tsn1040.ca, 9 o'clock Sunday night.
Sunday nights. Outstanding. Mike, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
The host of Off the Pitch, great guy from TSN 1040, Mike Martignago.